Hey everyone, how's it going? You're watching Corgi Lumpur, and today I'll be talking about how much a hawker in a hawker center makes in Singapore. One of my favorite pastimes is kind of doing the mental math in my head on how much people make, in particular businesses. I think it's kind of interesting getting a ballpark figure in terms of how much businesses make, because talking about salary and expenses and profits isn't something that people usually talk about. The lack of information about money in general has been something that has really been a pet peeve of mine for the last 2-3 decades of me growing up, because I always wanted to be able to find out if something was viable or not, and if no one was talking about how much they were making, and we were just judging them based on their clothes and what they were wearing and what car they drove and what kind of house they live in, where they live in, it doesn't really give us a real figure, because some of those things can be leased, put on a credit card, you could take out a loan for some of those things. There's a lot of factors which make those items that you have in your possession not really a good indicator on how much you make. So this is a first video in what will be a longer running series on how much people make across different industries, across different businesses. And of course, I'm not an expert at all of these different things. So if you're an insider in one of those industries, feel free to correct me in the comment section below at any time. Hawker centers are a thing in Southeast Asia, and these are basically outdoor food courts, which may not be as comfortable or hygienic as an indoor food court in a mall, but it usually has its appeal, which is price. People usually like to go to these places in Asia because it's a place where they can get a cheap, fast, and good tasting meal. Each hawker center has an array of stores, so you can go into one place just like a food court and find different types of food that you can buy. And as a result, we're just going to be focusing on one of these stores today, although as I said, this is going to be a series, so I will branch into other kinds of food. But today we're going to be looking at a Hokkien mee seller, which is an Asian prawn noodle kind of dish, and this one store just sells this dish in different sizes, 4 different sizes. And one interesting thing that led me to want to create this video is because the store owner gave me a data point, which was he was paying $1,500 in rent, and he was complaining that his rent was about to double because they were forcing people out of this building that they wanted to tear down and build something else in its place. And the stall owners in this hawker center were being relocated across the street, where they would be for the next 5 years before moving back into the new building, at which point they will most likely be paying even more rent when 2029 comes about. It's also easy to do the math here because the guy literally sells one kind of dish, which is Hokkien prawn mee, which is Hokkien prawn noodles. And I checked out his Google Maps rating, and it says right here he has a 4.1 star average rating among 33 different reviews. And this is important because it gives me a clue as to how many customers we can expect to patronize his store on a day-to-day basis. 4.1 stars is a decent number, especially for hawker centers. There's a little bit of a nuance because people in Asia tend to rate hawker centers a little bit differently compared to how they rate other stuff, which can be more in line with the traditional Western way of rating, which is 5 stars for anything that's decent and 1 star for anything that's remotely bad. I think a 4.1 star rating is a pretty good one for a hawker store, because usually 3 can be average, 2 is bad, don't eat at this restaurant, and 4 is on the good side. I don't think there's many, if any, hawker stalls which have an average rating of 4.5 to 5 stars. If there is, they're probably extremely rare, and the number of customers that they get lining up for their food is probably going to be on a whole nother level compared to some of these decent stalls. So let's get right into it. Here's 2 other data points that I used to get my cost for this guy. The first thing that I wanted to know was how much does it cost for this guy to make each individual dish. He has 4 different sizes of the same dish, priced at $5, $6, $8, and $10. Now, I'm not a chef, nor am I a restaurant owner, but I do have some experience preparing my own meals for the times that I've wanted to eat healthy in my life, so I do know how much things cost at the supermarket. So we're going to use supermarket prices as the benchmark for what it costs for him to put together a plate of Hokkien prawn noodles. I know 500 grams or a pound of prawn costs about 5 Singaporean dollars. And in that 1 pound, you get about 40 or so smaller pieces, and a tray of eggs would cost about $3 plus. So a single egg would cost about 30 to 35 cents. One of the reviews over here mentions that they ordered a $6 portion and it came with 3 prawns with the tail on and some squid. No pork or lard croutons, which is regrettable. And there is some chili sauce that goes with the noodles. I'm gonna do a quick and easy estimate of how much it costs for each plate to be put together and scale it up depending on how many customers that this guy might get to his stall every single day. So I would say that prawns and squid cost about 60 cents. Noodles cost about 10 cents. An egg, which gets cracked into the noodles for additional flavor, costs about 35 cents. With these 3 main items alone, we're a little bit over $1. And I'm going to round this number up to $1.50 just to include everything else that he puts into a dish, such as the cooking oil, the chili sauce that he offers, and the little vegetable bits that go into the dish. All of that puts us at $1.50 per plate. So his cheapest plate costs $5, and that's going to be the baseline that I'm going to use. $5 minus $1.50 is $3.50 of profit per plate. Again, all of these things are rough estimates. We're not trying to get his exact salary here. We don't care about his exact salary because we're not from the income tax department, but we're trying to get a sense on how much he makes as a business owner per month. The noodle store owner said that his current rent is 1,500 Singaporean dollars a month. We'll include his rent increase when he moves his stall this month in a separate calculation. So we're going to work with $1,500 a month, and we're going to also assume that he's paying $200 in terms of utilities and gas. He doesn't have air conditioning whatsoever, but he does have a fan running on the inside, the lights that he has to power, and also the gas stove that he has to use in order to fry his noodles. Now there's 2 other things that I found that are part of operating a stall in a hawker center in Singapore. The first thing is they have what they call the SNCC, which is Service and Conservancy Charges. I don't know what that really is and if that expense makes sense or if it's just a form of a tax that's slapped on top of the cost of operation for hawker center stall owners. But we could probably get into that in a separate video if there's interest in it or if I happen to develop an interest in it. But we're going to move on to the other fixed cost, which is washing charges. So every hawker center charges the individual stalls a monthly fee for them to wash the utensils that the food is served on. Those are things like your plates and your forks and spoons and your chopsticks. And I found that number to be anywhere from $200 to $700. So let's put that at $500 SGD. And the total expenses that we have for this one stall is now estimated at 2,400 Singaporean dollars a month. This stall owner seems to operate solo, so it doesn't look like we have to include any wages or employee expenses when we factor his expense calculations. His stall hours are between 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. almost every day, 6 days a week. So it looks like he's trying to get both the weekday lunch crowd, which is between 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. every day, and the dinner crowd, which is when people get off work, people get off school, and they're just stopping by to grab a meal or to grab some takeaway before they go back home. With that, we're going to make 3 different estimates as to how much he makes a month. In the first scenario, we're going to assume that he sucks. Not because his food does suck, but we're just trying to get a good estimate as to how much he might make in a really bad month. So we have 6 days a week, and we're going to assume that he serves 30 plates for lunch, which is 15 plates an hour. So not so fast and also not too slow. That's about a plate every 4 minutes. And we're going to assume that he serves 20 plates over the course of dinner time, which is between 6 p.m. and when he closes at 8 p.m. We have 50 plates a day times $3.50 of profit, and we get $175 of profit a day. Multiply it by 6 days a week, and we get a little bit over $1,000 a week. Multiply that by 4.5 weeks average that we have in a month, and we get about $4,700 revenue. Now we have to deduct his expenses, which we found earlier to be about 2.5K, and we end up with 2.3K per month after expenses of profit that this guy takes home. That's about $27,000 a year, which puts him in the 2% tax bracket in Singapore. So his $27,600 is going to be a little bit over $27,000 still. Moving on to what is probably the more realistic scenario, he manages to sell 50 plates for lunch, which is 25 plates an hour, or a plate every 2 minutes, which isn't really unrealistic for a guy who's operating alone because he doesn't have that startup time that he incurs when he stops working during lunch hour. He's on that walk, frying his noodles continuously, and he doesn't have to wait for the warm-up time. He doesn't have to wait for the oil to get heated up before he throws the ingredients in. And he can also make some of these plates in bulk. If there's a person who orders 2 or more plates, this guy does cook those plates together at the same time for efficiency and probably consistency in terms of taste. We're also going to assume that he gets 50 plates sold over the course of dinner. So we have 100 plates per day multiplied by $3.50. We get $350 a day, which is $2,100 a week, or $9,450 a month. After taxes, that puts our hawker friend over here at $7,000 a month, which is $84,000 a year. With this level of income, Singapore charges a 7% income tax, so that brings him down to 78,000 Singaporean dollars a year, which is about $6,500 a month. That's pretty decent for a guy who's operating a business of its own. I'm not saying it's an easy job because the guy has to sweat it out while he's cooking all those meals, but he probably does most of his business across 4 hours in a day. That's between 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. and 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. But what about those other hours outside of lunch and dinner? He probably gets some people stopping by. Like when I went there, I went at somewhere between 3 to 4 p.m. So not really a meal time. Let's assume that he gets about 10% more business from outside these main meal times. So we're going to assume 10% of 100 plates is 10 extra plates between those kind of odd hours when he first opens at 11 a.m. to 12 p.m., between 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. Let's just assume 10 plates, 10% increase in income. That brings him up to $11,500 a month, which is about $9,000 after expenses. That puts this guy at about 108,000 Singaporean dollars a year, which puts him still more or less in the 7+% tax bracket. So we're going to assume that is a little bit more than 7%, so that brings his income to about $96,000 a year, which is $8,000 a month. So there you have it, folks, a sample of what a hawker center stall that sells Hokkien prawn noodles makes in a month as an individual business owner without any employees. Watch out for future episodes of how much businesses make in this newfound series of mine, and I hope you learned something. Have a nice day. Goodbye.